Have you ever noticed something strange? The person talking the least in the room is often the one who understands the most. While everyone else is competing to be heard, they're noticing things nobody else sees. They're reading the mood, catching contradictions, connecting details that everyone else missed. And yet, they're usually the ones people assume are shy, awkward, or lacking confidence. But what if quietness isn't a weakness? What if it's actually a sign that someone's mind is processing the world differently? Today, we're going to uncover the psychology of quiet people, why they're often misunderstood, and why the people who say the least are sometimes thinking the most. Because once you understand what's really happening behind that silence, you'll never look at quiet people the same way again. The moment someone says, "Why are you so quiet?" most quiet people experience something familiar. For a brief second, they consider explaining themselves. Then they don't. Maybe they smile. Maybe they shrug. Maybe they simply let the question pass. Not because they don't have an answer, but because they've learned something important. Most people who ask that question aren't actually trying to understand silence. They're trying to make it disappear. And that's where one of the biggest misconceptions about quiet people begins. Most people treat quietness like a problem, like it's a personality defect waiting to be fixed. As if somewhere along the way, the quiet person simply failed to develop the confidence everyone else has. But psychology suggests something very different. Harvard psychologist Jerome Kagan spent years studying infant temperament. He identified a group of children he called high reactive individuals. These children responded more intensely to new experiences, unfamiliar faces, sounds, and environments. Their nervous systems weren't weaker, they were more sensitive to incoming information. In other words, they processed more. And when researchers followed many of these children into adulthood, a pattern appeared. A significant number became thoughtful, observant, and relatively quiet adults, not because they were afraid of the world, but because they experienced more of it. Imagine two people walking into the same crowded room. One person notices the music, the other notices the music, the conversations, the body language, the tension between two strangers, the subtle change in someone's voice, and the emotional atmosphere of the room. Which person is likely to become overwhelmed faster? Exactly. For some people, the world arrives in higher resolution, and when you're taking in more information than most people realize, speaking less often becomes a natural consequence. Not because you have less to say, but because your brain is already busy processing. The modern world doesn't reward deep processing. It rewards speed, quick responses, quick opinions, quick reactions. Silence makes people uncomfortable. If a conversation pauses for 3 seconds, someone rushes to fill it, almost as if the silence itself is dangerous. But quiet people often have a completely different relationship with silence. For them, silence isn't empty, it's active. It's where thinking happens. It's where observations become understanding. It's where ideas are tested before they're spoken. And this creates something most people never see. A quiet person may have already thought of the perfect response, the funniest joke, the smartest observation, the most insightful comment. But by the time they've fully formed it, someone else has already spoken. So the thought remains unspoken, hidden, invisible. And over time, this creates a strange experience. People assume quiet individuals have fewer thoughts, when in reality they often have more. As years pass, many quiet people begin receiving the same message from society. Teachers mention it, parents worry about it, friends point it out, relatives bring it up during family gatherings. You need to speak more. Come out of your shell. You should be more social. The message is rarely intended to hurt, but hearing it repeatedly creates an unintended belief that your natural way of being is somehow wrong. And eventually something changes. Many quiet people stop being merely quiet, they become private. Those aren't the same thing. Quietness is about speaking less, privacy is about revealing less, and privacy often develops after years of feeling misunderstood. After enough experiences where your thoughts were treated like curiosities rather than something worth exploring. You learn to keep more of yourself inside, not because you're hiding, but because not everyone has earned access. Here's something that deserves more attention. Quiet people are often the best listeners in the room, not the people waiting for their turn to talk. The people genuinely paying attention. They remember details. They notice patterns. They catch inconsistencies. They hear what people mean, not just what people say. Think about the last time someone made you feel truly understood. There's a good chance that person spent more time listening than speaking, because listening is becoming rare. Everyone wants attention. Very few people offer it. And quiet people often offer it naturally, not as a strategy, as a habit. Now here's where things become interesting. What happens when a quiet person finally decides to speak? Have you ever noticed that the room sometimes pays attention? There's a reason. When someone talks constantly, every word carries roughly the same weight. But when someone speaks selectively, people instinctively sense that their words have been considered, thought through, refined. The quiet person's thoughts often spend hours, days, or even years developing before they reach the surface. And that's why their words can feel unusually precise. Not because they're trying to sound intelligent, but because they've already done the thinking most people skip. Getting close to a quiet person requires something many people struggle with: patience. They don't reveal themselves quickly, not because they don't want connection, because trust takes time. For them, relationships aren't built through constant conversation. They're built through consistency, reliability, understanding. And once someone earns that trust, they often discover something surprising. The quiet person wasn't empty. They weren't distant. They weren't uninterested. There was an entire world beneath the surface. A world most people never stayed long enough to discover. That's why quiet people usually keep their circle small. Not because they dislike people, because meaningful connection matters more to them than endless interaction. They would rather have 2 people who truly understand them than 100 people who don't. And perhaps that's the biggest misunderstanding of all. People often mistake silence for absence, but silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. Sometimes silence means everything is happening. Thoughts, memories, ideas, observations, emotions, entire conversations unfolding beneath the surface. The loudest thing about a quiet person is often the part nobody can hear. So the next time you're in a room with someone who isn't saying much, resist the urge to fix it. Don't assume they're shy. Don't assume they're uncomfortable. And don't assume they have nothing to say. Because some people communicate through words, and others communicate through attention. The first group is easy to notice. The second group is easy to underestimate. But if you pay attention long enough, you'll realize something powerful. The quietest person in the room is often the one who has been paying attention to everyone else. And trust me, they notice far more than anyone realizes. If this video resonated with you, leave a comment with one word: quiet. And if you enjoy psychology, self-awareness, and understanding human behavior on a deeper level, subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. Because sometimes, the people who speak the least have the most important things to teach us.